Welcome to Colney Talk Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Welcome back to another episode of Colney Talk Podcast, a bite-sized show. I'm your host, Alex. First-time guest, happy to have you here. And to my returning listeners, really glad you're joining me. On this bite-sized show, I talk a bit about the Arsenal game and then pick out my top 3 Arsenal players who I think were great in the game and one player I consider the odd one who just had a poor game or not good enough who just needs to be called out. The weekend got here fast. And Arsenal, well, I think keep raising the bar following this game against Brighton. Arsenal's dominant display over Brighton was a testament to their strength and strategy amidst swirling doubts. I know I had worries, I can't lie there. Despite Brighton's grit, which they showed throughout the game, Arsenal's performance was a mesmerizing display, blending confidence like a seasoned chef harmonizing flavors. Oh boy, I was waiting for the lineup, and boy was I glad to see Starboy back at it. But when I also saw Zinchenko, I thought this has to be a game with a level up in tactical quality. And then Jesus starting in place of Martinelli, I guess this was some sort of, tactical change up as well in terms of personnel. Started the game with a set piece, giving Big Gabby free reign of a header, but wide off. Could have gone in, but that was a good start for us. As the game played on, I noticed this game was about tactical finesse from both teams. Brighton, though, comfortably played out of high press, while Arsenal had to borrow some more patience playing from out the back. Arsenal in this case were exposed easily when they pressed Brighton up top, finding themselves cut out of place in defensive containment. And this is some credit to Brighton's style of play, the way they just smoothly glided out of our press and the blind runs that they had in certain plays. It wowed me as another challenge that Arsenal had to understand and learn from. So it was an interesting situation for Arsenal to deal with. And defensively, they did contain as much as they could. But then Arsenal were not finding themselves forward, getting forced into sloppy passes. And this was reminiscent of Man City giving us no room to play when we were on the ball in the middle of the park. Then we had our first great run initiated by Ben White just to open things up, playing on to Saka for his first shot attempt, slightly wider, but then that gave us a little bit more encouragement in what we're going to deal with. And that, to me, was the lift we needed. And then another shot attempt from Jesus from a corner, from our plays, driving us forward, and a few more attacking moves, which gave the team more comfort, forward plays, and how they had tried to play their game in this first half. But that didn't stop Brighton, though, from showing their own intent as well, with a few fast moves, playing out of Arsenal's press, moving forward in their build-up plays, and they showed their own idea and intent in those same situations within the first half. Havertz run behind, as you've heard me say so many times, were just as threatening as you would imagine. And I think it was so much more to our game going forward because it kept them honest in the back line, have them consider him as a threat, just as you always have to factor in Saka on the right. It was impossible to ignore how organized Brighton were, though. They broke up our passing plays, and they were much more smoother in resisting our press. You've heard me say this, and I'll keep saying, because it was so good. It just felt like, wow, like we just couldn't hold them back. We couldn't clamp them and restrict them in their plays. And as swinging momentum goes, they had their chances. Arsenal had theirs as well. And Arsenal in this situation got back at some point, pushed Brighton into their thirds and kept them there pinned in trying to create something happen. And with that, Jesus got fouled in their box for a penalty. And right there, that was how things opened up. And so Saka stepped up and did his thing. Goal, 1-0. And then Arsenal had to deal with Brighton's blindside runs from their counterattack. This blindside runs, maybe I didn't notice it in the first game or some of the other games, but it was very clear a few times where they were never stationary when they picked up the ball and tried to pass through, which they did. And one was the best answer to Arsenal's press up top. Thankfully, we had numbers to close down the spaces when we realized we were fully exposed. But that was not all. Raya had to do some work as well with a wonderful save from a whip pass shot from Brighton that was really flying into the corner net. And that was us playing honest game defensively and keeping our feet up high for wars to come against this Brighton's attack. At this point, the positives for Arsenal were finding passing lanes going forward since they were trying to fill themselves out. Saka and Ben White's combination, as we know it to be such a quality element in their game, start showing up and making some of the runs happen on the right going forward. And then for some moments, Arsenal had stationed in Brighton's box, had a couple of chances to score, but weren't so lucky. But this was showing itself as something as the momentum was growing in Arsenal's favor. We were finding successes on the right, as I said, dispossessing Brighton and driving into the box with a number of pullback plays. And shots were now coming in with blocks, which is good because that's always a positive in what the intent is and how the reaction will ensue to either rebound or recycle play in favor of Arsenal. And that was it for the first half. But that 1-0 gave us enough to really build up from. It could have been maybe 2-0, but at this point, we're talking about Brighton here. So 1-0 is a good lead and at least a score before halftime. Start of second, 1-0 there. Still a lot to be done for this game, as I would imagine. Havertz cross to Jesus was the first great play that I could count in attempt for a second goal, as they were now trying to build on top of the lead that they had. And Jesus was there taking advantage in size and strength on Brighton's left back. So that showed itself in some situations. Arsenal looked the better side in controlling play in Brighton's box, methodically with another shot on goal from Odegaard, from a corner, and a few more shots in the box. That told me that this second goal was coming because they were just knocking on the door, driving forward and staying hard on that press to make something happen. And then there was an intense series of Arsenal hustle play, pressing and recycle build-up that really made Brighton find themselves caught out of their situation to handle every kind of pressure that Arsenal was bringing to them. And from that, Jorginho found himself running into the box with the ball for a pullback chance for Havertz to make it 2-0. Not only was it one of the few moments you would see Jorginho driving into the box for a pullback, but it was one of those moments where it was just called for both of them to really connect in the box and show that, that moment where it's these two players that know each other in the field and how they always affect the game, offensively, and it definitely played itself out with that second goal, and that was amazing. Excellent run for Havertz, as you would know him always to do. And how many times are you going to hear me say that? And there are reasons for it, because it's more about the intelligence, it's more about the awareness, the heads-up play, and who is on the ball that is ready to deliver for him in those timely movements that he does, darting past the defensive backline. That's something. Then instant subs from both teams. Saka and Jesus off for Trossard and Martinelli. 2-0, that's not enough comfort for a lead, but there were so many other thoughts behind that. Brighton tried to give a response back of their own. They pushed us to stay compact defensively, and it was such a beauty to see Arsenal perform their defensive all-station plays. Staying compact, they staying pinned down, playing off the ball, and they gave absolutely nothing to Brighton. Nowhere for them to cook up anything, any attacking play whatsoever, and it ended up in nothing. That was a moment, and a few of those. Interesting to see Martinelli on the right, though, because I thought he would come in and play his regular position, but it was Trossard on the left and Martinelli on the right. If you ask me, it could be one of those things where we're getting to see some players play or perform in an uncomfortable position, or some plays that they usually do not play in. And for Martinelli, this is the second or third time I'm seeing him do that when he gets subbed into the game. So maybe we'll see some more of that going forward. And from that, the versatility from these players are huge, and it makes for an unpredictable team, because that's, I think, the on brand for Arsenal for this season long, making positional changes, but personnels that you would not imagine being in that role and playing it excellently. So I guess that will be so much more conversations we'll have about that. With Brighton on the ball more, Arsenal had to keep their transceivers up in defending the types of runs Brighton were making. They had their own series of plays and attempt to score. They had the ball, pressed us, pinned us down. The Gunners had to dig deep. With 10 minutes to go, they had to do their job defensively, sitting in their half, keeping everything tight in front and the ball right in front of them, not giving anything away as they had been doing so far. And they knew they had this intent of keeping a clean sheet and defending in every situation, not showing any crack that Brighton may find as a way to oppress and make something happen. Well, as Arsenal kept defending, I thought that was it for the most part, defending this 2-0 lead and trying to close out this game. Well, I was wrong, as I always like to be. Trossard picked Dunk's pocket on the dispossessed ball for a fast break pass from Havertz, leaving him 1-on-1 with Brighton's keeper, and he did not miss. He did not disappoint. Go 3-0, checkmate, ice cold. I mean, it was all about defend, which they did excellently, but in turn, it felt like that we can actually punish you on that, which they did, and this heads up move by Trossard to dispossess the ball and, dart out for that fast break chance. These are just intelligent moments from players like himself, Havertz, Jesus, and a few others, where it's not just about picking the ball and trying to recycle, but it's pick the ball and drive forward. So another thing for so many teams to consider. And when you have Martinelli on the field as well, who can just use his blazing pace to really punish players, things like what Trossard did is a reminder for how much you may want to contain Arsenal in their half and pin them down. As the defending theme kept on throughout the rest of the game, all you could see was Arsenal players enjoying and doing that in their half, making nothing go past them all throughout. And that was the game. 3-0, 3 points, clean sheet. I would not love stop saying this. It was amazing. I mean, Arsenal played a complete game defensively, especially acknowledging the exposures in the first half where they could have been torn apart to shreds, but we limited that exposure and adjusted immediately as the game grew. Talk about a big team play and reacting as you would expect. Let me talk about my top 3 performers. First up, Havertz. Clearly one of the best games offensively and defensively. Let me repeat that. Clearly one of his best games, offensively and defensively equally. This was a common trait that we would see from Jesus in those games that he would play in the past as a 9. But to do that in so many defensive phases in this game was special. He took advantage of his connections with Jorginho in the game, unleashing several darted runs on the back line and just causing a lot of problems. He was just phenomenal. Top baller. Second player, Rice. I know, like most of you know, Brighton are a tough side, and they usually humble us in terms of play formations, tactics, and just giving us a tough time, which they do. But in effort to absorb their fast breaks, their dribbles, and playthroughs, we had to do a lot of breakup plays. And there was none other than Declan Rice, who was just on it for this game. He was the engine defensively to slow Brighton down, and that was not an easy feat. I mean, Big Gabby and Saliba had a lot to do, but when you had Rice coming in there and kind of playing like a conduit between both players, that was a lot, and he did an amazing work, in front of them. Third and final player, I just had to give it to Jorginho because he was a huge factor in Havertz's good run plays, helping him stretch Brighton and stretch the game in our favor going forward. He was the centerpiece in recycling the balls, especially for that second goal. Besides the assist that he had, his link-up plays between Rice and Odegaard was huge. I can see why he just didn't get subbed off for this game, because typically he would, even after we had a 2-0 lead, because Arteta has done that in the past. But he was crucial, and he performed really well. Could you guess for an odd one player in this game? I didn't have any, so there was no need to even consider that for me. Defensively, the team was solid. Stepped up more in the second half. Shout out to the defensive players all through because they worked their socks off and corrected any mistake they had, and they played really well. So there's nothing for me to complain about from them. Really glad with this win because this was a team to worry, a game to really worry, not like the others aren't, but we know what kind of side this Brighton team is. Thick and fast as it is, we're surely going to have to keep going and keep climbing because it's a whole lot of high hill for us going on. Surely a confidence boost for this team going for the midweek game, which we know is a big one as well. All right, I'll leave it here for now. Talk to you all real soon. Take care.